Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for being here. Is the volume okay?
Yes.
It's good? All right. So I think this might be the first time yet in South Florida that I've gotten to read from my new collection, which is called Same-Sexy Marriage, a Novella in Poems. I kind of thought this would be a prose piece, and I thought about it for about 13 years, and it came out differently than I expected. It's my first time kind of working with more of a traditional narrative arc. Traditional might be the wrong word, but a narrative arc. And there's a little bit of a story behind the story that I want to tell you before I read the poems, because they all go together and I don't have to stop in between them. So I thought I should tell you why I wanted to write this novella in poems in the first place. The reason is that years ago, I grew up in Seattle, West Coast. I came out to my family. I moved across the country to Pennsylvania. And the following year, I got an email from my mom's friend, and she said, I just thought you should know that there's this kind of troubling story going around about what you're doing with your life. And I was like, tell me, I have to know, I love gossip. What am I doing with my life? And she said, so your mom has told a whole bunch of people that you're married to a surgeon and living in New England. And that was very untrue in every way. But I was also really curious about the other Julie. And I've thought about her probably every day since 2004, like kind of wondering, like, what would that be like if I were married to a surgeon living in New England? And so I wanted to try to write that story as a kind of subjunctive, surreal memoir. Then I realized if I write that story, there's got to be another narrative too. I have to try to tell the story of the parents who are telling the story of her. And I need to figure out, because like most of you, I had parents who told me, if you tell a lie, it will lead to another, and you'll have to keep lying, so get out while you can. But what if you can't get out? So what if you have to keep updating the story, or you get caught in a lie? What do you do then? So then I've got two what-if narratives that I have to build. But then I also thought, no, I gotta have a third narrative, because there's also real me, real Julie, not married to a surgeon, not living in England. And there's sort of this poignancy that comes up when I think about the fact that my mom did marry me off to someone in one sentence in 2004, but before I could have married my actual person, my actual love, anywhere in the country. And we didn't get married until 2014. And we didn't see it recognized nationally until 2015. So I thought, like, how strange is that like there's this whole other narrative where we're trying to get the same-sex marriage, but I could have had the marriage in just the fairy tale that my mother told. So, and maybe it's not a fairy tale. So I'm gonna read 5 poems. They take about 16 minutes combined, and they are linked, and they're all from the first half of the book, so that you won't find out any of the surprises. There are surprises. So there will still be a surprise at the end if you choose to get the book. So the first poem is called The Surgeon in New England. Surely he had a name, though I never learned it. Did my mother call him Clark or Kent? He must have had a set of biceps like Superman, those waspish good looks, and a paycheck that would put a journalist to shame. But what's with the cape, the boots, the snug bodysuit and red briefs worn on the outside? A picture takes shape, sinks deep into the crevice between my mother's eyes. Distasteful, she must have sighed. Despite Clark Kent's respectable, heterosexual spectacles, was Superman possibly a little bit gay? In the end, I bet she settled for my brother's name, the one meant to balance our childhoods, so I wouldn't have to turn part boy. Why shouldn't her should-have-been son transform into a should-have-been son-in-law right there inside the phone booth of her mind? Jeffrey Hamilton. It sounded good. The MD perched upon his shoulder like a lucky bird. If I married him, reader, this surgeon, this Jeffrey Hamilton, I must have loved him. And my mother says to anyone who will listen that I married him. She is quick to explain how the ceremony was small, elegant, and private. Topiaries were involved. Just family and close friends at a Lutheran church with Lancelot's sword for a steeple. A reception following at the local yacht club, where the Hamiltons have been members for years. When was this? June, of course. And where again? New England, where my mother has never been. Surely some suspicious friend will work up the nerve to ask, but isn't New England really 6 separate states? Where exactly do Jeffrey and Julie live? My mother would like the idea of Maine, like Main Street and mainstream American values and Murder, She Wrote. But her friends might get to pestering about specifics, and what would she say then? No internet at home for a quick Google search. Computers have always been synonymous with sin. No way to confirm if Cabot Cove is even a real place. And what if Augusta, the capital she learned in junior high geography, turned out to be a shithole? I know my mother better than anyone. She picks Vermont. Not for the green rolling hills or the sharp white cheddar, and certainly not for Ben and Jerry, 2 men who opened an ice cream shop together. What's gayer than that? What's more distasteful? But Vermont is home to a city called Burlington, which must have been booming to give the world my mother's favorite store. Straighter than a row of 2x4s, that Burlington coat factory. And what kind of surgeon, people will wonder, of the son-in-law from old money Burlington, Vermont, who loves billiards and slalom racing and the occasional glass of scotch, who has a deep voice and a chiseled jaw, who never developed a taste for ice cream, even as a child. He specializes in hearts, of course, like the much younger man, Scandal, who married Mary Tyler Moore after she divorced the 2nd time. Oh, how the wholesome have fallen. That cardiologist was Jewish, though, not this one. Not tall, Protestant, clean-shaven Jeffrey, who once modeled as a teen for JCPenney. And how is Julie these days? The same folks will soon inquire. It's good to know I've been keeping busy, writing articles from time to time for the Burlington Gazette. I have a following. Friends may recall how I once plucked away at an old typewriter in my parents' basement, making crisp singing sounds where the Steinway keys beneath my fingers only clacked. Remember Heloise and her helpful hints? Well, I'm a wealth of knowledge too, on growing orchids in your greenhouse and strengthening your tennis serve without bulking up your arms. Ladies still look like ladies in my town. The bravest among them is bound to press over Lipton tea and ginger snaps between a break in the bingo numbers. So when do you expect to be a grandma? I'm relieved to learn we don't have children, but not to worry. Though my eggs are approaching their best if used by date, Jeff has friends in the fertility biz, friends who promise 40 is the new 30 if you have the money to spend. Keep your eyes peeled for a birth announcement in a year or 2, our darling fraternals. Little John, it's a family name, and Jessica after J. Lee Fletcher. Keep your eyes peeled for my mother in a year or 2, late night at the Kinko's on Delridge Way. She'll be asking the only clerk on duty if she can do something with stock photos. 2 newborns centered on a card, each wrapped in gender-appropriate pastel. We have thousands of stock photos, ma'am, the clerk replies, mouthful of wires, thumbing the iPad like digital roulette. Can you be any more specific? Make them fair-haired, pink-cheeked, my mother says. And if the eyes are open, make them blue. The surgeon in New England revisited. I've been gone so long, the neighbors are beginning to worry about me. First, it was my husband's interminable residency, then years he spent building his private practice. They've watched my parents disappear into the yawn of night, so many red-eyed flights depositing them in Burlington at dawn. You can't keep flying coast to coast, the neighbors warn, not at your age. Let your daughter visit you for a change. My mother explains how she loves the seasons in Vermont. People in the Pacific Northwest have never seen such striking contrasts. In autumn, we take them on long, leaf-peeping weekends. In winter, it's skiing in snow, where everyone knows they have the best powder. And then, of course, I was on bed rest with that difficult pregnancy. What parents wouldn't come to their only child's rescue? You can't believe how quickly I got my figure back either. already playing tennis twice a week. My mother carries pictures of the twins in her wallet, flashes them everywhere like a VIP pass, lets no one inspect them at length. The neighbors say how much they'd love to meet Jessica and John, not to mention Jeffrey, and it's hard with their father's schedule lecturing for the AMA. He'll come to Seattle one of these days, my mother assures them, but right now Julie and the kids go with him everywhere, even overseas. He doesn't want to miss any big moments. None of the neighbors can blame him. I hear my parents are going to meet us in Rome this year for a 3-generation family vacation. Like Vermont, Rome is another place I've never been. My real-life wife and I are talking vacations too. We're long overdue for a trip and need to redeem our passport photos with a first international venture. Maybe Italy, we say, daydreaming Renaissance art, Vespas cruising cobblestone roads, late-day gelatos and gondola rides. Clearly, we have swallowed the guidebooks whole. I can picture us there with our slim luggage cases, matching styles, though hers is prudent silver, mine a more flamboyant chartreuse. Would we pass them in the terminal, I wonder, that family of 6, the parents sleek and glamorous, the children small and glamorous, all moving languidly as if in a perfume ad. The grandfather beams in the background, and the grandmother, her dictionary splayed, shouts in almost Italian for someone to carry their bags. When my parents join a senior center in redacted Oregon. Well, it's just a real pleasure to meet you folks, says Rand at the central kiosk. All I need is proof of residence and we'll get this registration party started. My mother clocks his bushy sideburns, desperate for a trim, the Kermit the Frog necktie peeking between buttons of his denim vest. It's all she can do not to roll her eyes. Now, will you be living here full-time or just part of the year? Part, she clarifies. We have a house in Seattle, symphony tickets, that sort of thing. He nods, hands the forms to my father. And then, of course, there are the grandkids in Burlington. So we spend a fair amount of time in Vermont. Well, that is quite a coinky-dink, Rand exclaims, lifting his glasses to the crown of his head, squinting gleefully at both of them. You're not going to believe this, but you've got 3 guesses as to where my people are from. The hub of the universe. Guess what? My husband and I are moving from Burlington, Vermont to Boston. Jeffrey was just offered a position teaching at a prestigious medical school. We're not sure which one yet. Maybe Harvard or MIT or UMass. Does it really matter? It's prestigious. But the best news is Boston is so big, everyone knows something about it. Even if they've never been, even if they've only watched a few episodes of Boston Legal before deciding it's way too liberal. The city is large and familiar, yet people have a way of staying anonymous. We're very private, after all. Our landline has always been unlisted. If we have to move, and we really do, the timing couldn't be better with the twins starting preschool in the fall. They're quite accelerated, you know. I may have said already, but they were toilet trained before they could even say a word. It's the British way, the way I was trained. Now they sight-read letters, speak simple sentences in English, Spanish, and French. They can count all the way to 50 without help. It's hard to say which suburb we'll choose or what I'll do with my days once the moving dust has settled. I'm sure I'll spend some time browsing local historical sites. I just love culture. I'll take a tour of the Old North Church, buy a season tickets to the Pops, try a slice of that famous Boston cream pie, just a small one. Take up power walking with new friends around the well-known Boston Harbor. We're eager, of course, for my parents to visit. Jeffrey and my dad love golfing together, which leaves more time for Mom and me to browse the outlets. Some of the best ones are near the Berkshires, though, so we might need to take a girls' getaway weekend. Fortunately, Jeffrey's mother can always come down and stay with the kids. Did you know Filene's Basement started in Massachusetts? Did you know there's a Boston Flower and Garden Show every spring? Did you know Massachusetts became the first state to legalize same-sex marriage back in 2004, the same year Boston Legal began? Across the miles, My mother leans against her luxury appliances, frowning. She can't imagine why I'd ruin such a lovely story by bringing up a thing like that. And my last poem is called Boston Marriage. Even if we had met in Boston instead of Bellingham, even if you had not been wearing your green sweater with the wool sash askew, or driving your Mercury Tracer with Tennessee plates, David Gray blasting from the Discman you had rigged to your radio, I know I would have loved you, then as now, there as anywhere. Even if I had not been wearing my high-water pants with red sneakers and dark woven belts, what a catch I was. Or that Rhoda Morgenstern throwback scarf in my still permed hair. Even if we had not been 22 and 23 respectively, you brand new to the West Coast and me never having left it once before, I know I would have loved you, then as now, there as anywhere. Even if we were two women older and otherwise occupied, enlightened enough to recognize a sudden flutter in the gut is not admissible as empirical evidence, I can picture it. My son at the preschool program for exceptional suburban achievers, my daughter at the Tchaikovsky and Tot summer music camp, me, other side of town, following my GPS to the closest Whole Foods because I didn't have time to bake the gluten-free birthday cake I promised. My husband's colleague's wife has celiacs, poor dear, and I'm in charge of preparations for her party. Perhaps you're late for a meeting. Perhaps you just popped in for a hummus wrap with sprouts and a nice strong coffee. Perhaps I dent your Volvo hatchback in the parking lot with my monstrous minivan, the one we're planning to upgrade to a Mercedes station wagon. It's no secret, I've been distracted since the move, and I'm hoping if I wait right here beside your sporty two-door and apologize profusely and write you a check, that you'll consider not reporting me to my unforgiving insurance company. The fact is, there have been a few other incidents, and I don't want our rates to spike again just because Babylon came on and I was singing along with the sun in my eyes. And this I can see clearly, you walking toward me through a checkerboard of silver Audis and black sobs, the late 30s librarian version of you, which is much like the early 20s graduate student version, just more resplendent. Still with your long stride and your tousled hair and that furtive look you have been known to wear, appraising me first with well-earned suspicion. Who is this soccer mom loitering beside your car? She actually leaning against your door? But soon something between us will shift. We'll have to exchange phone numbers so I can get the damage fixed. And then we'll be waiting outside the body shop, which is already charged with metaphor, and we'll decide to get some lunch at the corner cafe where one thing will lead, tenuously at first, then undeniably toward another. Not if you hit my car, real you insists in the dim glow of our real-life living room. Real you thinks I'm a hopeless romantic, can't be trusted with such a wild subjunctive since I have a weakness for movies like Serendipity. Absolute shit, you say, which is true, I won't dispute, but also sliding doors, which even you admit was charming. See how they end up together anyway, sooner or later, the two who are meant to be. They're not even gay, real you grumbles. It's true. We need more queerly beloveds, don't we? Oh, the puns I am capable of. I place my real hand in your real hand, tell you again how I would have loved you, then as now, there as anywhere. And the real gift is that you believe me. Thank you.
That's just simply genius.